Hello! Guess what I'm doing today? So, about a month ago, I submitted two of my knit pieces to a local art show, and I had all these rowdy feelings about it. Like, I was so nervous, and it was just like, who am I as a knitter to submit these pieces to this art show? But I got accepted. So, today is the day I go drop off the pieces, so I thought I'd bring you along. I also volunteered to help hang the art show, and this show is actually run by a nonprofit organization called Friends of the Yampa, and the pieces will all get auctioned off at the end and proceeds will go towards the organization. So it's really cool, and it's all based on Yampa River inspired works. So I submitted the Yampa beanie and the Yampa cowl. But I always get asked about how I started the business and kind of what got me started and what helped me succeed and able to go full-time as a knitter. So today I thought I'd bring you along. I have to take Arya out on a hike and then go hang the art show, but I thought we'd get a little chatty about some of the ways that I was able to really get started in the beginning and what kind of led me to where I am today.
If you're new around here and don't already follow me on Instagram, I'm Shireen, and I've been running this business for about 5 years now, with the last 3 being full-time. And I mostly sell my hand-knit beanies that I make with ethically and sustainably sourced natural fibers. I also sell my knitting patterns and have slowly been incorporating kind of mountain and outdoorsy related goods to my shop, like stickers, tote bags, and hats. I live in a small mountain town in Colorado and get outside as much as possible, so have loved sharing those outdoor adventures with you too.
Hello, hello. Oh, the sage smells so good right now. Knitting for me actually began as a hobby. I moved to Colorado about 10 years ago, and at that time I had been working in kitchens. I was a chef for about 10 years, and when we moved to Colorado, I kind of wanted a hobby that could help me wind down from long nights on my feet in the kitchen, and knitting just seemed like something that could be really fun to do. I bought myself some knitting needles from the thrift store, a ball of yarn from Walmart, and just taught myself on YouTube, and I just fell in love with knitting. And I just knit stuff for my friends, I knit stuff for family, and I found that I just really enjoyed knitting beanies. Like, I really like to see progress of something happen, and so beanies are relatively quick knits, but they're also functional, and I wear beanies all the time in the winter, so that's kind of what I started with. And then a couple years down the line, I had been gifting my friends and family knits for a few years, and my friend said, "Hey, I want to buy one. Are you selling your stuff?" And I was like, I think a lot of hobbyists do this, where they're like, "Me? You want to pay money for this thing that I made?" Sure. So word kind of got around, and I started selling stuff to friends. I was like, "Hey, if you buy the yarn, I'll make it, da-da-da." And that happened for about a year, and this was all while I was working about 70 hours a week at a restaurant, and maybe even more. And my friend who was a jewelry maker, she said, "You should talk to Ohana, this local shop in town, and see if they want to sell your stuff." So that was when I first started thinking, maybe I can actually have a side business. And at this point, I was getting super burned out. I found a podcast about turning your hobby into a business, and I just binge listened to this podcast, and I'll link it down below. But it just sparked this idea in my head that, hey, this is something that's possible, and it really got my wheels turning. So that was kind of the start of everything, and I think there's just so much that I owe to my community here in Steamboat, and really that is the one thing I would say helped me succeed in my business. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. I actually have to go run down and drop my work off at the art show, and then I volunteered to help, so you'll get to see a little bit of that. So I'm gonna go in and drop off my stuff and then help hang some art. So back to what I was saying before, one of the biggest things I felt like helped me gain early success in my business was really fostering my local community. Like my community is super supportive and so tight knit. And so, through word of mouth and friends and stuff like that, that was kind of a great early start. So one of the factors in this was donating to local nonprofits. So for example, Friends of the Yampa, which is where we're hanging the art show right now, they run an annual silent auction to raise money for protecting the Yampa River. And so when I started the business, I kind of knew that I wanted to give back in some way through the business. I really care about the environment and the national parks and outdoor spaces, so started off by just donating to nonprofit organizations that supported those types of causes and conservation. And so locally, we have a lot of nonprofits that raise money or do silent auctions. So when I was donating beanies to be auctioned off, it kind of helped me gain exposure to the type of audience who are already aligned with those values. Like someone who is going and bidding on an item to raise money for Friends of the Yampa would also probably like to buy from a business that supports a cause like this. So early on, that was kind of how I gained some traction. And then now I'm actually a 1% for the Planet business partner, which means I donate 1% of my annual revenue, not just profit, but revenue, towards vetted organizations and nonprofits that are about protecting the environment. And I have also since expanded my donations to organizations that support LGBTQ rights, racial justice, and women's rights as they intersect with the outdoors as well. Good morning. I don't know what happened after I hung the art show, but I got distracted and totally forgot to finish videoing. That's definitely one of my biggest challenges with YouTube right now, is just remembering to capture footage. I do have to finish up some beanies this morning to send to Ohana, so I might overlay some of that while I talk. Anyway, back to my story of how I got started. I was talking a lot yesterday about how really gathering a lot of local support and support from the local community really helped get me started with my business. And one of the biggest things for me was also getting into a local shop. And Ohana, which I've videoed about before, they're a local shop in town, and the owners are artists themselves, so they put all of their art on hand screen printed apparel and home goods, but they also carry art and goods from other local makers. And so I reached out to them and asked if they would want to check out my beanies, and made an appointment, and I brought my stuff in and they really liked it. So this was all while I still was working in the restaurant. And so I probably sold with Ohana for about a year before I even started my Etsy shop. And they really helped me figure out like my workflow and my packaging and even brand messaging for why people should buy my beanies. So it was really great as far as like helping me figure out all of that stuff before I even started selling online. Ohana themselves is a really awesome shop in town where people just really love supporting that business. And so my recommendation as far as getting into a local shop is finding one that really aligns with your values too. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about as far as donating to nonprofits, is if you find a shop that is also aligned with your values and the types of goods that you're selling, it'll really help finding the right people for your stuff. Because if you get into just any shop, maybe they're not aligned with you, or maybe the vibe of the shop is not what you're going for, then the type of audience you'll attract is going to be that audience. Once I got into the shop, they helped me figure out like all the pricing too. Then by the time I started my Etsy shop, I kind of had a handle on all of that business stuff that I had no concept of before. So it was kind of like various stepping stones. And I think a lot of people, when they tell you they went full-time with their business, it might sound like I quit my job and then I have my full-time business. And that's really not true. Like for me, I actually left my restaurant job after about a year of already side hustling and selling at Ohana to work at a local farm. I worked probably half the hours I was working as a chef, and so it gave me a lot of time to really build Smeeny Beanie. And then I actually also started a second business at that time, which was my private chef business. A lot of my old regulars and clients would ask where they could get my food, and then one of them was hosting a dinner party and they were like, Shireen, like, could you cook for the dinner party? And I did, and it was super fun. So my other business, Wilder Bean Provisions, was born. And I originally thought that that would be my full-time business and that Smeeny Beanie would be my side hustle. And somehow, like, maybe combo of the burnout from cooking and then just really finding a lot of creative energy with Smeeny Beanie just slowly but surely became my full-time business. So I still somewhat dabble in my private chef business now. I only do it in the summer months, and I only probably take on 2 to 3 chef gigs a month, just from June to September. And so it's been hard to let go of, but it's such a part of my identity that it's really hard to just stop doing it completely. And I still love to cook, so I do love that. But I like to give myself plenty of time and space to work on Smeeny Beanie because it's something I really care about right now. Anyway, back to the progression of selling. So I opened the Etsy shop and sold on Etsy for I think 1 or 2 years while I was building my own website. I built my website on Squarespace, and so for a long time the shop button on my website just went directly to my Etsy shop. And I think I did that for a year or 2 before I actually went full on and did e-commerce on my own website. And again, it's almost like these stepping stones. Like, first started selling with Ohana, and they helped me figure out a bunch of stuff. Then selling through Etsy, it was actually really nice. I know they take a decent cut, but so does selling at a shop. And so as far as pricing goes, it's like figuring all of that stuff out that make it make sense for your business. But selling with Etsy, it was like I didn't have to worry about the sales tax and like remitting it and filing all that stuff because Etsy would do that part for you. And then by the time I started selling on my own website, it was just one more step of learning instead of just like all the steps. And I had mentioned the transition job before. So this was all while I was working at the farm. So I was making an income by working and then having the time though to slowly build up my side hustles until I was able to take the leap and go full time. And I think I got to a point 2 years into working at the farm where I was like, what would happen if I actually put all of the energy into these businesses? So I planned to quit the farm. I put in my notice, and my last day on the farm was supposed to be March 18th, 2020. And of course the world shut down on the 15th. And so I had already planned to leave, but it was kind of like this huge push of, you're doing it, you're doing everything full time. And I'm just amazed by how this has gone. There's still so much more to tell, but I'll go run and drop the beanies off at Ohana and then show you the shop. So I think I'm going to end the video here and make a part 2 about how the business has gone since I've gone full time. But as always, thank you for being here and for being part of the journey.